Let's talk about hydrogen water. Health and wellness have become one of my biggest passions over the last few years. I'm always searching for new ways to feel better, think clearer, and live with more energy. And one thing that's stayed consistent in my routine is the Echo Hydrogen water bottle. I've been using it for a couple years now, and the new Echo flask design is so cool. It's sleek, minimal, and beautiful. It goes with me everywhere. Whether I'm getting in a workout, traveling, or just starting my day, it's become a staple in my daily ritual. And now Echo is offering my listeners a special discount on the Echo flask. This is not your standard water bottle. It contains a high-tech electrolysis system that splits the water into hydrogen and oxygen, infusing your water with molecular hydrogen, one of the most powerful tools for health at the cellular level. Hydrogen water helps boost natural energy, improves cognitive function, and supports detoxification in a world that is filled with toxins. There are over 1,400 studies and more than 150 years of research behind hydrogen water, and yet most people still don't know about it. This isn't a fad, it's science, and it's part of how I optimize my health every single day. Head over to echowater.com/ridebeyond to learn more about the incredible benefits of hydrogen water and get your Echo flask at a special discount. That's echowater.com/RIDEBYND. Welcome to Ride Beyond. This isn't just a podcast about motorcycles. It's a celebration of the passion, creativity, and untold stories of the people who ride them. I'm your host, Ben Giese, and I've spent the better part of my life on two wheels, traveling the globe and building relationships with some of the most talented and inspiring people out there, each one with a compelling story to tell. The motorcycle is our connection, but the stories, that's what takes us beyond. Hey guys, welcome to the first solo episode. My fiance was talking to me the other day and she just said, I think you should record a few solo podcasts. And my initial thought was, man, nobody wants to hear me just rambling on the microphone by myself. In my opinion, it's the guests that I talk to that make this show interesting. But, the more I thought about it, I've had a really, really fun and interesting career so far, and so many stories and experiences and interesting insights to share. And I guess as I've gotten further along in my career, I kind of want to take the knowledge and experience that I've learned and pass it on to other people. Maybe it's people who are interested in being in the moto industry or working in the creative field in one way or another, or just simply like people who want to find a way to follow their dreams and like do something cool. So maybe sharing some of my experience along the way can provide that kind of insight to help people along their journey. And yeah, if I can provide some value through my story, I think that's really cool. I think this first one that I do, before starting this podcast, as most of you know, myself and my business partners started a motorcycle magazine called Meta about 13 years ago. And a couple of years into that, I developed this tagline for the brand, a Life Well Ridden. And I think that tagline is really cool and really meaningful to me. And even though we're not publishing the magazine anymore, I still try to embody that message of a life well ridden in my life. And maybe I'll tell that story and just how motorcycles changed my life, what they mean to me, where they've taken me, and where that tagline kind of comes from. I think it's like an interesting backstory. And, I can follow up with more of these solo podcasts where maybe I talk about the story of the magazine and we dive into that. And then I can, then we could do one where I talk about why I started this podcast and kind of give you guys my insight onto, my inspiration behind doing this and the reasons why I'm doing it. And on top of that, man, I've had so many cool experiences and trips around the world and incredible journeys with these like amazing stories. A lot of them were published in the magazine, but like there are these incredible stories that I would love to just, share here in a new way. But yeah, we'll start off with this first one. I guess, this phrase came about because I was thinking about like what would be a tagline for this brand. And to me, motorcycling like changed my life in every way possible. And the bike has kind of led me to every opportunity and every decision. And without motorcycles, I don't really know what my life would be or what I would be doing. So it's really about finding that inspiration. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I saw motocross and supercross, and I thought it was like really, really cool. My dad rode a little bit. He had some bikes when I was growing up, but it wasn't like a big thing in our house. Eventually he had like an old XR, I think. Then he got a street bike and he did some like local racing on his bike. And I saw motocross and supercross on TV and saw Jeremy McGrath, and he kind of became my hero. And I thought it was such a cool sport, and it was something that I was interested in. And that year on my birthday, my 10th birthday, my dad surprised me with a brand new dirt bike. It was a 1994 YZ80. It was like pink and white, and it was a really cool bike, man. That thing will always be super special to me. And I got that first bike and we learned to ride. We lived in this neighborhood in Colorado, and it was a pretty small neighborhood at the time. It has since developed like really big, but there was like some hills and stuff behind the houses where we lived, and this kind of open space. And there was a little muddy little pond where the cows would go drink, and we called it the cow pond. And we learned how to ride at the cow pond just on an old dirt road. And I was learning how to use the clutch, learning how to shift, and eventually we got good enough to like dip down into the ditch by the pond and like start coming out and catching a little bit of air and little jumps, and slowly just figuring out how to ride. And yeah, man, it was at that point like motorcycling really became like an obsession. Like after I started riding, for a few months, I became completely obsessed, and I eventually quit playing basketball. I eventually quit playing football, and motocross was just going to be my life. Like it was so cool as a young kid to like find my thing, like this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. I had all the magazines, and my entire bedroom was plastered with torn out pages from the magazines of like pictures of all the pros like Travis Pastrana and McGrath and Jeff Emig and all the top guys of the time, like, I would just rip these pages out and use scotch tape and, like, cover every square inch of my wall. I would be in class, like, in, middle school, I remember just being in class, like, not even listening to the teacher and just, like, looking at magazines, motocross magazines, because I was just obsessed and I couldn't wait to, like, go ride on the weekend, and eventually we started racing. Yeah, and it was great, man, like, I feel lucky as a kid to get that gift and not only get this really fun activity, but, like, it was also, like, the gift of, like, an identity, and, like, now I knew who I was, and this motorcycle was, like, part of who I am. I was a moto kid. At school, there's the jocks, there's the cheerleaders, there's the nerds, and, like, I was a moto kid, and it was cool to, like, know who I was and, like, have that identity, and yeah, and also, like, growing up my adolescent years, like, having this outlet to keep me focused and on the straight and narrow, and while other friends were maybe out partying and getting into trouble and making poor decisions, I wasn't doing those things because I had this goal of being the best I could be and learning how to, race and improve, and it gave me something to, like, work toward, which is really, really cool. Like, having a goal that you're constantly trying to improve at is really enjoyable, and, like, the progress along the way, and you see these improvements happening, and it teaches you motocross teaches you that you have to work really hard if you wanna achieve success. Like, there's no shortcuts, that you have to work hard on the track, you have to ride a lot, you have to put in a lot of time on the bike and just practice technique, practice cornering, practice jumping, practice everything. It takes a lot of work and a lot of repetition, just like getting good at anything, it's that 10,000 hours to become, like, an expert at something. It's so true. And it teaches you that discipline, and you can see your improvement in real time because you're, like, working your way up through the ranks and, like, going from a beginner rider, and then suddenly you're in the C class, and then you graduate to the B class, and then suddenly you're in the A class, and then eventually, you turn pro, and, like, this work you're putting in is showing up in real time, and it feels really good. It's really exciting, and yeah, man, it just teaches you the value of discipline, and I guess another thing, like, it gave me that's probably the most important growing up racing was the community. Every weekend we would pack up the trailer. Well, we would spend the entire week either, practicing or prepping bikes for the race on the weekend. We'd get home from school and you go ride and practice, or we're working on bikes, prepping them for the weekend, loading up the trailer. And then Friday night, trailer's loaded up. When my dad gets home from work, we drive down to the racetrack and meet up with all of our friends. And it was so cool. We had this little community and we would all pit together and park together. And, the parents would be drinking around a campfire, and the kids, we'd all be running around the pits, either on our little 50s or on mountain bikes, or just running around shooting each other with airsoft guns, just having so much fun, just being at the motocross track with all of our friends. I think that was, like, the best part of racing, even more than the racing. It was just being there with all your friends, and it was so fun. And, like, the community that it's provided me through my entire life is, like, something that I'm so grateful for. And I think that's like the thing that I'm most grateful for with motorcycling is the people that it's connected me with. And, they become lifelong friends. So it's pretty special. All my best friends were fellow riders, and, the kids that I hung out with at school were the other moto kids. And my lifelong friends for the last 30 years are people that I met at the racetrack and grew up riding dirt bikes with and traveling the country with. And, to this day, like my very best friends came from two wheels, and it's really cool. But yeah, I mean, that really, a few years into it, after we really learned how to ride, racing became my life. Like, we would go to school during the week and we would race on the weekends. It was a really cool childhood because like we would be traveling the country to these different races throughout the year, and it felt really cool to be able to like go to different places and race our dirt bike and then go back home and go to school. It felt like, I'd walk through the hallway and the thought would go through my mind, like, I'm so lucky I get to live this like interesting life. Like, they'd probably go home and play Xbox all weekend. And like my family and I were driving to Las Vegas and like racing at the World Minis, and like it's such a cool adventure that we get to have. And it felt like I was doing something of value in some way. Like I was doing something meaningful with my time and my life. And from a young age, it just provided so much value and self-confidence too. Like just knowing that like I'm good at something and that I'm like working hard for something, and I know this thing is going to be my future in one way or another. Like, I don't know. It's just a really, really cool way to grow up. Yeah. Just living life differently than other kids in the best way. But yeah, eventually I got my pro license, which was another really cool feeling. I remember I wanted that so badly, and I had worked so hard for, so many years to get to that point, that when I got the notification in the mail that my pro license application was approved and I was going to be able to enter like pro racing, that like I got like teared up a little bit because it meant a lot. And I just felt so proud. I remember like pulling up for practice at my first pro national, and I'm waiting and staging and I'm like so nervous, and like Ricky Carmichael comes rolling up next to me to get on the track, and then here's Chad Reed rolling up. He talks to Ricky, and all these dudes that I've been watching on TV since I was a little kid. I'm about to go on the track with them. It's such an insane feeling. Like one of those moments feel like you're in a movie or something. I want to take a moment to talk about my absolute favorite gear brand. I got my first set of Fox gear when I was learning to ride in 1998. Not just because it looked cool, but because it meant something to me. That Fox head was more than just a logo. It was an identity. All these years later, I'm still wearing Fox, and it still means just as much. For 50 years, Fox Racing has been chasing the edge, pushing the limits of what's possible with moto gear. From past legends to the next generation of riders, Fox has never stopped evolving. And through it all, the mission has always stayed the same: build the most advanced gear on the planet for those bold enough to push beyond the limit. I've been part of this journey since I was a kid, and I'm proud to still fly the Fox head. Go check out the latest gear at foxracing.com. There's so much excitement. I got my butt kicked, but like it was just really cool to be there and be on the same track. And yeah, and from there, that was my senior year of high school. So I remember graduating high school, and I had worked, during the winter, and so I had a little bit of money saved up. I think I was delivering Chinese food all winter, delivering Chinese food in my local town. My car always smelled like Chinese food, but I was delivering Chinese food all winter to just save up enough money to do the pro nationals, because I think at that time the entry fee was $250 per race, plus I had to pay for the gas to get there. I built out a box van, like this little old 10-foot old budget truck. I converted into a moto box van. I had a little fold down couch slash bed in there where I could sleep in there. There's no AC or anything, so it was just hot, but it worked. But I remember hitting the road and driving across the country to the East Coast to go race. Which races was it? To go race Southwick and High Point. And I felt so free, like more free than I ever had in my entire life. I was 17, 18 years old. And I just remember being in my box van with my dirt bike. And I just knew I was going to be on the road for a couple months. I had the windows down, I had my music playing, and I just felt so alive, so free, so grateful to be like living my dream of like going to a professional motocross race. And this is like what I worked toward. And I don't know, man, that I'll never forget the feeling of like those road trips. Just finding my independence for the very first time, and realizing how good it feels to chase your dreams. And I was a decent rider, but at that level I got my butt kicked, and I it was tough. But I was just so happy to be there and to be in the pits and to be parked next to the best riders in the world, and to be on the track with the best riders in the world, and to just take it in, be part of this environment and in this thing that I've been such a fan of for so long. And I'm finally here, like doing it and living it. And man, those couple summers racing the nationals, like I'll never forget that. It was such a dream come true. And just being there, regardless of my results, like I felt like I made it. It's one of those times where it's like, man, I made it. But like motocross is also a pretty gnarly sport, and it comes with a lot of injuries. And especially when you get to that level and you start riding faster, and I'm trying to make that next leap to gain the speed to not only like just be at the race, but to actually qualify for the main event and do something worthwhile. Pushing myself in practice to get there. And that's when the injuries started, and I started getting like really hurt. By that point I had worked so hard to try to get to where I was with riding, and it just kept biting me and giving me so much pain. And I was sick of the recovery process and always being injured. So I was like, what, screw this. Like, I'm done. I'm going to just focus on school and figure out what's next. So, but through those injuries, now looking back, like I'm so grateful that I had them, because those were the times, all those times when I was down and out for that couple of years. I loved motocross. I loved being at the track. So if I couldn't ride, I was gonna go hang out with my friends and just go hang out at the track. So I would still go to the track, but instead of bringing my bike with me, I would bring like a camera with me, and I would shoot photos of my friends and edit the photos. And then I started making videos of my friends and like making these cool little video edits. And it just like really awakened this creative side within me. And it showed me that like this combination of like creativity and motorcycling was like super cool. And this is something that I could actually do something with. And, I made these little moto videos of my friends riding at the local track, and I'd put it to some music and kind of do like a Verb Moto inspired edit. I remember like Vital MX would like share some of my videos, and I would get like 10,000 views, and I thought it was like so cool that people were actually like watching my stuff. And that kind of started my whole creative journey in the sport. And eventually this entrepreneurial spirit came out, and I was like, I was playing with Photoshop. Like when I was editing these photos, I would play with Photoshop and kind of learn how to use it, and eventually learned how to do some like very basic graphic design type work. So I actually decided to like start my own company. And I was 18 years old, and I started a little brand called For Life Clothing, with the number four, for life. Moto is for life. It's kind of the way I felt about it. And I started this little brand, and I would design my own apparel designs, and I would get t-shirts printed and hats and hoodies. And I made like a little 10 by 10 canopy that was like branded with like the silly little logo that I made, and had like a tabletop cloth cover, and did my best to make this brand come to life at the local races. And I would set up t-shirts and shirts and hoodies and hats and stuff for sale at the track. And next thing I know, I'm making like $1,000 on a Sunday at the race. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And doing that apparel brand was a really cool learning experience, because I learned that not only like can you make a living, you can make money in moto outside of just racing, but like it taught me how to build a brand and how to run a business, and things like the manufacturing process and the printing process and the design process and managing inventory and packing orders. And like I didn't know what I was doing. I had in my closet, I had in my mom's house, in the closet, I had like these shelves, and I just had apparel like folded and bagged by the size and the style, and like started this like inventory and learned how to accept online orders and ship them out. And this was like the early days of social media. I had like a MySpace page where I was promoting the brand, and I would do photo shoots and like hire a photographer to like shoot photos of the brand and have my friends model it, and learning about like marketing and designing like a little catalog so I could try to sell to shops, and just learning the ins and outs of like how the industry works, just through trial and error, and just like literally just doing it and figuring it out. And that was really fun. And it kind of sparked this interest in graphic design. So I decided to go to school for graphic design. I went to Metro State University in Denver, and I went there for a few years. I was working at my dad was a manager at a BMW dealer, and I was a valet driver there. I did odd jobs. So I did like a couple summers. I would work actually year round. I would work on the days that I wasn't at school. I'd be at the BMW dealership. I was a valet, parking cars for the clients. Like when they brought their car in for service, I would bring it back to the garage and then run back up and get the next car. And when the client got there to pick up their car when it was done, I would drive it up to them and drop it off. And The job kind of sucked, but then I would also work construction with my stepdad, and that sucked even worse. And just doing these jobs, it made me feel like this is not what I want to do with my life, you know? Like when you're working construction and it's -10 degrees outside at 7 in the morning, and I'm like an apprentice electrician, like running wires through the house and my hands are frozen, or sprinting up and down this ramp in this car garage, grabbing people's cars all day long in like 100-degree heat. These jobs like really gave me the determination to not do that with my life, you know, to like develop a skill where I can do something that I actually enjoy. So I was working those jobs that were not really going to be my future, but they were how I made money in the meantime. And I was also, starting that brand for life and making videos of my friends and shooting photos and, learning Photoshop and building websites and even like basic like coding, like customizing my friends' MySpace pages for them, like silly stuff like that. But like just learning this really broad range of skills. And a couple years into school, I realized like I wasn't really learning anything in school. I was learning everything from doing it, from running this apparel brand, from working on creative projects with my friends, from like learning Photoshop on my own and Adobe Premiere on my own, and like figuring all these things out just through doing it. And yeah, like learning all these skills through experience, like kind of became like a Swiss Army knife, I had like all these random talents through the things that I was doing that would end up being very useful. And eventually I realized how valuable it is to be like have a diverse range of skills that you can fall back on. And I think being able to like learn and adapt quickly and like have the confidence that I can figure these things out was probably the most important um lesson that I had. Was like if you can just like be open-minded and absorb things and learn quickly and figure it out as you go, like that's so valuable, because then you can kind of do anything. You can kind of learn anything with enough time and practice, It gives you confidence that you can do anything, I guess, because things are always changing. And like especially now in the world today, like the landscape is changing so fast. Like you have to be able to adapt to keep up. And if you can't learn new skills frequently and quickly and adapt with the changing landscape and the changing world, like you're going to get left behind. So I'm glad that like early on I was able to like learn this diverse set of skills. And as things have changed, I've been able to adapt. And so anyone out there who's like trying to like find their way creatively and be independent and just, make a career in this space, like now more than ever, you have to be able to learn and adapt, because things are changing. They're going to change quick, and you have to be ready to adapt what you're doing to the world around you and make it useful. But yeah, so I was working at the car dealer, working some construction, and there was one night that kind of changed my life. Now that I look back on it, I was at my parents' house living at home. I was in the basement one evening, pretty late. Everyone was in bed. I was just down there scrolling on the computer on Vital MX on the forum, and I saw a job posting, graphic designer wanted at Answer Racing. I was like, man, that's a long shot. I probably won't get it, but I should just apply for that. And I had a feeling about it. I had some feeling about it. I felt kind of stuck in my life. I was trying to make this brand make money, but it wasn't enough to like where I could quit my job at the car dealership. So I don't know. I didn't know what I was going to do next, or I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I just knew I wanted it to be creative and I wanted to be in the industry. And this felt like an opportunity. I put together a resume. I didn't really have any experience, but I kind of made it up a little bit. And there was some things I designed and like some stuff from my apparel brand. And just the fact that I started this little brand was like a good portfolio piece. And like I lied on my resume. I said I had a bachelor's degree when I was still in school. I didn't have a degree yet, but I just wanted the job. And you know what? Like, I don't encourage people to lie, but I think you just got to do whatever, you just got to believe in yourself and do whatever it takes to get to where you want to go. And I did have the skill to make it happen. I just, I lied about a piece of paper because I just wanted it so bad. And thankfully they didn't check that I didn't have a degree. But yeah, this is what I was dreaming of. I like my bedroom was literally my mood board for my life. I had motorcycle pictures from magazines taped all over my bedroom wall. And I had like this art piece I made in school that was like California inspired. And it was like photos of the beach and of like this California lifestyle. And it was kind of this mood board on my wall for what I wanted my life to be. Is motorcycles. It was California. It was the beach. And this was my chance to this was maybe my ticket to get there. And so I spent the next couple days, like the whole weekend, working on a resume. And I remember I was still working on it. Like I went to work at the car dealership, valeting cars, and I would sneak away into the break room and I would like be working on my resume for like an hour at a time. And I think my boss Scott would be like, dude, where'd Ben go? And I was up in the break room working on the resume to find another job. But yeah, man, I made that resume and I applied for that job like my life depended on it, because it did. I remember thinking that I'm like, this could change my life. I have to get this. So I don't know. I put everything I could into that little piece of paper and was really, really manifesting it. Like deep down, really wanted it. And I really wanted to get noticed. So I emailed I emailed my resume to them like 3 times. I faxed it to them like 3 times, and I mailed it in the mail like 3 times. So they received my resume like 9 times. I think just that like made me stand out. And like I remember just the next couple weeks, like I had a feeling they were gonna call, and I was just waiting, and I was like waiting. I'm like, when's it gonna come? When's it gonna come? I want to take a quick break to tell you about an apparel brand that's changing the game. In a world full of fast fashion and forgettable trends, with no regard for quality or integrity, it's rare to find a brand that actually stands for something. Foreign Rider is one of those brands, and it's my absolute favorite apparel company for a reason. Founded by my friend Ralph Dunning, a pioneer in performance wear with over 30 years of experience, Foreign Rider blends timeless design with technical precision. Ralph built this brand for people like us, riders, explorers, creators, people who live active lives and need gear that can keep up. Every piece is made with ethics, intention, and excellence. There's no shortcuts, just clean, functional design built to last. Ralph has literally traveled to the ends of the earth to source the finest performance materials on the planet. There's a reason I wear their products almost every day. The fit, the feel, the quality, it's on another level. Foreign Rider's not just clothing, it's a mindset, a reminder to live with intention, to choose quality over quantity, and the exploration of freedom. Check out the full collection at foreignrider.com. I promise, once you wear it, there's no going back. And I was sitting in class one day, and my old Nokia phone This is like 2009 or something. My old Nokia phone was buzzing in my pocket, and it was like a California area code. I just knew it was answer. So I just got up, walked out of the class, like grabbed my stuff, walked out of the class, answered the call, and he was like, "Hey Ben, this is Doug Geller from Answer Racing. We'd like to interview you about the graphic designer job we have open, and would you be willing to come into the office on Tuesday for an interview?" And I was just like, didn't even know what to say. I was blown away. I did, yeah. I was like, yeah, of course. Of course I'll come in for an interview. That sounds great. He didn't even know I was based in Colorado. I didn't want to like ruin it. Like, yeah, I'll drive down and I'll meet you guys on Tuesday. So after that call, like I hung up and I didn't even go back to class. I was like, I'm done here. Like my time is done here. I didn't go back to class. I didn't finish my degree. I flew out to California for the interview with the little money I had. I was so nervous because it meant so much to me, and I'm pretty introverted, and like I was definitely underexperienced, underprepared, but I really wanted it. And the only thing I knew about job interviews was what I learned in school and what my parents told me. And I was always taught that like when you show up to a job interview, you got to look super professional. So I showed up to Answer Racing wearing like a full suit, like slacks, a button-up shirt, a jacket, and like dress shoes. And it didn't fit me. I think it was maybe my dad's that I borrowed because he let me borrow it. And I just looked so silly. Thinking back, it's so silly because the action sports industry is super laid back. Like people go to work wearing flip-flops and board shorts, and here I am like this 20 something, like 21-year-old kid like showing up in a suit. I probably looked so goofy. It's so embarrassing. But yeah, I sat down and interviewed for the job, and talked about my apparel brand and my passion for design and my experience in moto. And I think like what really sold it was my enthusiasm, like my just sheer enthusiasm for motocross and design. And I just wanted to be there so bad. And I think they could feel that and sense that in my demeanor. And I think that's why they gave me a chance. But after the interview, they said, all right, well, we'll call you back. And then, dude, it felt like an eternity waiting to hear back from them. But it's probably about a week later that I got a phone call, and, they said, we'll bring you on as a temp employee for about 6 weeks and see how it goes, since you have no experience. And if it goes well, then we'll hire you on full time with a salary. And I was like, dude, that sounds great. So I put in my notice at the valet job and moved to California to start my career at Answer Racing. And I showed up, and day one, Doug, the creative director, came out and he's like, all right, I'd like to see you, come up with some comp gear designs. And I'm like, first of all, like, I don't even know what he means. What's a comp? What does that even mean? But, he just wanted me to mock up some ideas for like gear. And I didn't even know how to use Illustrator yet. So I like had to pretend that I knew what I was doing. And thankfully this dude that sat across from me, his name was Chris. He was also a designer. He's older than me and obviously way more experienced, but like he was super nice. And like I would kind of have questions that I would ask him. I'd try not to sound too dumb, but he would give me some pointers here and there on how to do certain things. And I would Google things on my computer as I was going and figure out how to learn this software is super high pressure because I was like, man, they just asked me to like come up with some designs and I don't even know how to use the software. And if I don't figure this out, then my dream is over. This is like my one chance and I can't blow it. So the pressure was on. I figured it out. I came up with some cool gear designs and he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, like this is cool. Now I want you to work on the catalog for next year's gear so that we can have that ready to send to dealers and you do that in InDesign." And I was like, "Shit, I don't know InDesign." So I had to figure it out. I don't know how to design a catalog. I did some like really ghetto catalogs with For Life, but I didn't know how to design a real catalog with part numbers and, you know, 100-page professional catalog for a brand. I had no idea what I was doing. But I poked around in the software again and, I was probably pretty slow at first and like figured it out and slowly designed the 2011 Answer Racing catalog alongside that dude, Chris. And that was super cool. And then, after that catalog, I have, part of design. Yeah. And after that catalog, I had the opportunity to start working on some gear, which was really exciting. Designed some gear that I thought looked cool. It was kind of inspired by like more like board short graphics and something that maybe a little different from what was being done in moto at the time. And like it was pretty insane because I came up with some design concepts and then the team liked them and accepted them. And then they brought in James into the office to like look at everything and he loved them. And then, 6 months to a year later, James Stewart, my favorite rider in the world, showed up at Hangtown and was wearing the gear that I had designed. And like, that was just an incredible feeling, man. Like, from a kid who grew up racing dirt bikes to being able to design the gear that my hero would wear was an incredible feeling. It was really cool. And I remember when he came out, it was a very unique, distinct look. So when he came out, it was the first race of the season and he had these really interesting colors. It was like a really like neon green with like a teal blue and white, and it looked very different from anything else. And I remember all the magazines were like taking photos of him, and some of the dudes from Trans World Moto, I could hear them talking like, "Oh damn, James's gear is so sick. Like that's next level. He looks so cool." And just felt really good. Felt like I was just really proud of that. But getting there was wild. Like when they gave me that temp position, it was moving to California was like the most exciting time of my life because it's kind of like when I was leaving my house to go travel the country and do the motocross nationals. It's that same feeling of like freedom and chasing my dream and like finding independence and living this life that I had manifested for so long, and it's finally happening. It was so exciting. And I had nothing, but it didn't matter. Like I had nothing. That first week at Answer, I was sleeping at a Motel 6 because I didn't have an apartment yet. I didn't have anything. I didn't have furniture. I just had a bag of clothes and I was living at Motel 6 down the street, which is crazy. And then eventually my buddy Austin shot. Huge shout out to Austin. I'll never forget this. He was living in San Clemente at the time. He was from Colorado, but he was living in San Clemente, about a half hour from the office. And He's like, dude, just come stay at my place and you can sleep in my bed. I'm like, what? He uh he slept on the couch and gave me his bed so that I could be rested for this new job and do a good job at answer racing. Like, dude, when I think about that, that is like so cool and so crazy. He's like, yeah, just you have my room. You sleep in my bed until you figure it out. Like, I'm good. I'll sleep on the couch. Like, I think he was between jobs or something, and I was getting up early to drive into work. So he's like, yeah, just sleep in my bed, get some rest. And dude, that was so cool of him. And I stayed with him for about a week, and then my buddy Charles Caslew, who worked at the answer office. He was working for Pro Taper, but he offered me to stay at his house. So I stayed at Charles' house for a couple weeks. I slept on his couch. And that was super cool of Charles as well. And then eventually I got a few paychecks and I got my first apartment. It was just this dingy little hole in the wall, little tiny little single bedroom apartment with like no windows and like in the work. It was just kind of the worst, but is also the best. I was super stoked. I didn't have anything. I had a sleeping bag on the floor. And so Randy Valade, who worked at the office as well, he's like, dude, you can't be like living like this. Like, here, I'm getting my daughter a new mattress. Just take my daughter's old mattress. So he like gave me his daughter's old mattress so I didn't have to sleep on the floor. Because I think that temp position was only paying me like $12 an hour or something. I don't know. Wasn't making that much money. By the time I paid for food and paid for my apartment, I wasn't going to be able to go buy furniture. So yeah, Randy hooked me up with a bed. And then eventually, we got 6 weeks down the road and I was doing okay with answer, and they offered me a full-time position. So I went home and got my stuff from Colorado, and my parents gave me a little love seat couch that they were getting rid of and an old TV. So I had some furniture, and I started my life. And as my time at answer racing progressed, I think they saw that my creative abilities were a little more broad than just only graphic design, and they started giving me more and more responsibilities, which was really cool. It's when Pat Lopez came on board, Pilo, shout out to Pilo. He's one of the first people who like really, really believed in me. I remember he got to answer and he's like, why aren't you guys like doing more with this kid? He has talent and like you should be utilizing it. So like once Pilo showed up, all of a sudden I wasn't just doing catalogs and gear. I was, helping design all the ads for the magazines, and I was, designing their website and managing their website and managing their blog and designing their email newsletters. And that's when Instagram just started, and I was managing the Answer Racing Instagram account, and then I was doing videos for them and doing like gear videos and like videos with their athletes and like so many different creative things that Pilo pushed for me to be involved in, which was really cool because it helped me continue to grow and like gain more skills in a professional setting. So I'll always be grateful to Pat for believing in me early on. He was the first one who really, really believed in me, and I'll never forget that. And then eventually through Pat, I met this dude, Nate Hawley, and he was a moto guy at DC Shoes. And like we were out down in Paula riding, me and Pat and Nate. And Nate was like, yo, dude, like our the guy who does all the moto stuff, he's leaving, and we're gonna need to fill that spot at DC. Do you have any interest? I was like, yeah, bro, like get me an interview. Let's do this. So Nate put in a good word. I talked to Don Maeda of Transworld, because I knew he was friends with the marketing guy, Brian Casaro at DC, and he put in a good word with Brian Casaro, and I had kind of a couple different guys like pushing for me to get this job, which was really cool because I had proven myself at Answer and I was doing really good work at Answer. So like these guys saw that and they believed in me and they vouched for me because my work was good. And yeah, so eventually, I was able to apply for the job at DC, and if again, it was just like when I was waiting to get my job at Answer, it felt the same way. It felt like an eternity waiting to hear back just every day. Like, is today the day? Is this the day I'm going to hear back? Because at Answer Racing, like, it was really a dream come true to work there, but I was just scraping by. They were paying me like minimum wage, and like, God bless them for giving me a chance and opening the door. I'm so grateful, but it was horrible money. So if I got a job at DC, like suddenly I could get paid like a decent salary. And not only that, like just grow as a designer and like work at a bigger brand. And it just meant so much to me to like make that next step. And I got a phone call from, I think it was Nate first. And then after I talked to Nate, I had a phone interview with their creative director, Devin Stevens. And then eventually Devin had me come in to the office. And I was so nervous again. But this time I didn't overdress. I dressed for like the DC role. I wore like a button-up shirt, but it was more casual. And I was wearing Vans instead of dress shoes. Oh, actually, no, I was wearing DC shoes. Because I went out and bought a pair of DC shoes for that interview so that I didn't show up in Vans. But yeah, I showed up and I was nervous, but I felt confident because I knew what I had done at Answer Racing, and I showed them my work, and I showed that confidence, and I think they saw my enthusiasm again, just like at Answer. That enthusiasm is so important. But I showed that enthusiasm, and I think Devin was holding his cards close to his chest, but he, after our interview, he's like, all right, I'm going to walk you around the building and introduce you to everyone. And I was like, dude, I got the job. Like, if this dude's taking the time to go introduce me to the entire team, I got the job. He tried to play it cool, and then when I left, he's like, yeah, we'll give you a call and let you know. And I want to give a shout out to a really special partner of mine. I've been working with 805 Beer for close to a decade now. And honestly, it's more than just a beverage company to me. It's a symbol of a lifestyle that I believe in. 805 was born on the central coast of California, the 805, a place where life moves to the rhythm of surf, moto, music, and open roads. Whether you're out riding, jamming with friends, or just soaking in the last light of the day, 805 is right there with you. It's not about hype, it's about living fully and embracing every moment. But what makes 805 truly special is their commitment to sustainability. They've been brewing for generations and relentlessly focused on preserving the land that they call home, conserving water, reducing waste, and protecting what matters, the land where we live and play. They support the raddest events and the sickest athletes. But most importantly, they support the culture. That's why 805 has become a staple in my life. A couple days later, he called me and he's like, yeah, we want to hire you. We're like, when can you start? And like, dude, I was so stoked because now my dream was coming true even more. Like, I had this dream of living on the beach in California, and Answer Racing, like I was living in Lake Elsinore. It's like a shitty little desert town. No offense to Lake Elsinore, but it's about an hour from the ocean, and it's hot and it's kind of ghetto. And now I could move to Huntington Beach and kind of live the lifestyle that I wanted, that I dreamed of. So getting that job at DC was really, really exciting. When I started there, like, again, I just felt I had knowledge of the software at this point, which was nice, so I can actually do the work, but man, I felt out of my league. Like, I went from being at, like, a small little company where nobody really knows what they're doing that well to, one of the biggest brands in action sports and, like, working with, like, some of the most talented graphic designers, in the entire industry, and I didn't speak the language. I didn't really understand, like, fully the design language, and we would have, like, these weekly design meetings. I'm like, "Dude, I have no idea what they're talking about." But I didn't show it. I pretended, again, fake it till you make it. Like, I pretended to know what I was doing, and I absorbed the information like a sponge and, like, watched what the other designers were doing. They're all so talented, and the creative director, Devin, like, I'm still friends with him to this day. He's, like, one of the most talented designers and creative directors I've ever met still. He has incredible work, and just, like, what I learned from him was just the attention to detail, like, on another level, man. Like, that attention to detail and that final 10% of detail makes 90% of the difference. But I learned a lot. I just learned a lot being around such talented people and working at a big company like that where you have, bigger budgets and bigger projects and, like, a bigger team and more athletes and bigger opportunities. And I remember, like, the second day at DC, like, they sent me out to Ocotillo Wells on the moto team video shoot where I was out there. There was a helicopter, and, like, we had the whole film team and all the athletes out there, like Jeremy McGrath, and, like, it just felt surreal again. I had some very exciting projects that I was assigned. Like, I led pretty much everything moto. I did, like, the gear, all the ads, and, like, a really cool project was the DC Shoes Supercross activation. Like, I got to design their the entire, like, bus, like the big DC bus that goes on tour to all the Supercross races, and the tent and the canopy and the whole Supercross pit experience. And DC sponsored the Last Chance Qualifier board at the time, so I designed the LCQ board for Supercross and all the tough block covers and banners in the stadium, and I worked on, like, the team film that they put together that year. And so, like, at Supercross that year, I felt like I was such a big part of Supercross. It was really cool, and DC was a big part of Supercross that year, so I felt like I was a big part of Supercross, and being in the DC suite and watching the races and cheering for our team athletes like Trey Kennard and our dude Tyler Behrman and all the DC riders. And it was just, man, pretty surreal experience. Like, it didn't feel real. Like, this kid from Sedalia, Colorado, now I'm living in Huntington Beach, like, working with athletes like Travis Pastrana and Robbie Madison and Ryan Villapoto, and, like, designing Ryan Villapoto's logo and his signature shoe, and, like, working on, like, epic film projects with Robbie Madison and, like, Malcolm Stewart and Trey Kennard and Adam Cincerillo. And it is just nuts, dude. I learned a lot, and it was a dream to be there. I felt like I was in over my head, but I figured it out, and that was like my university. That's where I learned the most. It was at DC Shoes, so I'm super thankful to have that experience. And eventually, one day, I came into the office, and the like, the director of the marketing department for DC, he pulled me into his office and several others one by one throughout the creative team, and we all got laid off. And it was, like, such a tragic day for us. It was it was a really, really tough experience because I had worked for so long and so hard to get to this place where that I wanted to be. And then, I had accomplished my dreams and it felt too good to be true. And then it was all ripped away from me like in an instant. They let us go. And that it felt really, really hard at the time. I think I took it as a lesson of like, I felt really pissed off because I worked really hard to provide a lot of value for the brand. And I'm like, I'm giving my heart and soul to this brand, and you can just write me off in an instant like that. Like I'm just a number on a sheet, The CEO is probably looking at an Excel spreadsheet and just checking us off the list. That felt really bad. And like from that moment on, I was like, I'm never going to be a cog in the machine. I'm not going to like let my destiny be in someone else's hands. And I'm not going to like pour my heart and soul into something that I don't get, that I have no association with, that can just be taken away from me at any moment. Like no matter how much value I provide, they can just rip it away from you. I wasn't going to put myself in that position ever again. So I wanted to just do something on my own and be free. So at the end of the day, like that really painful, challenging time at DC was the biggest blessing in disguise because it led me to start my own business. And I teamed up with the crew at Verb Moto at the time, and I was doing some like freelance design work for them. And then I had this idea to start a magazine. I was super inspired working at DC Shoes and like seeing the surf and skate industry and like the creativity and passion that was coming out of that industry. And there was these really cool publications like Monster Children and What Youth, like surf and skate, that had beautiful photography and interesting design. And Moto didn't have anything like that. We had just very boring magazines. I loved those magazines as a kid. No hate towards them, but like there wasn't anything cool like there was in surfing and skateboarding. And I thought that like I could do something like that. And I teamed up with the guys at Verb Moto. Andrew Campo, he was like their ad sales dude. He had all the relationships with all the brands in the industry, and he had the connections to bring in the advertising dollars to make this thing a reality. And I had the creative ability and vision to like make something truly special and unique. And together, we started this company called Meta, and we started a magazine, man. The first few issues were under the Verb Moto umbrella, and then eventually we departed from Verb and like took it and ran with it on our own. And I'll tell the whole magazine story in another episode because that's a whole story in itself. I think the next episode I can do like a dive into that story. But it was really, the idea was really to just create a career path around the way we wanted to live our life. So having the freedom to like work from home and travel and meet interesting people and be creative and document these stories and inspire people and do it in a way that's preserved in a physical form. We had no idea how to make a magazine. And, I was thrown into the fire being like a creative director and editor, a designer, every day was different. It was, one day you're on a photo shoot, the next day you're editing text, the next day you're doing layouts, the next day you're doing all the marketing and social media and emails and keeping up on the website. And it's just kind of an endless rabbit hole of work. But it was always something different, and there's always a new story, and there's always something inspiring. And like I said, man, these stories that we're making are preserved in print forever, which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, leaving DC was the biggest blessing. I got my freedom. And again, it was another moment. Like, it's like when I left home to travel the country racing, and then when I moved to California, and then now it was this new adventure of creating my own thing again for the first time since For Life clothing, and feeling free and just feeling so free. I think like feeling free is like the best thing ever. And when you're doing something that makes you feel free, I don't know, that's so important to me to have that. But we were free with Meta, and we could do what we wanted. We didn't have a boss. Nobody could fire me, and it was in our own hands to make it work. And we made it work for a long time. And it was a really, really incredible ride that we'll dive into next time. But those times when you think your world is ending, when I lost my dream job, like, it's the best thing that could have happened to me. So I guess all that to say, like, if something bad is going on in your life, like, just try to think about how it could be a positive thing. Like, try to see the positive in what's happening, and think about what doors this might open. But yeah, the magazine, like, led me, it was an opportunity to travel the world, to meet my heroes and tell their stories, and meet interesting people, and work with the most talented creatives in the world, and meet some of my best friends in the world, the people that I love. Like, the process of creating this magazine, like, led me to all of that. Again, like I said earlier, it's like, it's the people along the way that made it so special. And if I would have stayed at DC, like, I'm sure it would have been good, but like, the fact that I got laid off and had that desire to do my own thing and start something new, like, that's what really led to the magic of the last decade of my life. And I'm so grateful for it. It's been such an incredible ride, from getting that first motorcycle at 10 years old to that chapter of my life, racing, and like growing and finding myself as a person on my motorcycle, and like learning these life lessons that would carry me through my career. All this just goes back to that tagline, a life well ridden. And I think I really won the lottery when my dad got me that bike, because at the time, he thought he was giving me a gift, a birthday gift, but what he was really giving me was a new life. He gave me a life. He gave me, with that motorcycle, he gave me a community that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. He gave me an identity. He gave me a career path that I would really enjoy and find a lot of meaning. He gave me an escape. Motorcycles are a good escape. It's a good place to find mental clarity and creativity. And it's an outlet for so much enjoyment. It's like, it's a way to travel and to see the world, and it's a way to travel through the world, and a way to travel through life. Like, the motorcycle has been everything to me, and like, that's why I say a life well ridden, because it really has been. Yeah. I think next time I'll dive into the story behind Meta and Vana, and and just get into the whole journey of this magazine. I think right now my brain's a little tired. I'm not used to talking so much, so feeling a little spacey. I think I'm going to wrap this up, but let me know if you guys enjoyed this, if you like these solo episodes, or if I just need to stick with interviewing people because I'm going to bore you to death. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you're watching this on YouTube or something, just leave a comment, like give me some feedback on things you'd like to hear. If you have questions for me, or if you want me to talk about a certain story or a topic, or I can definitely like do that. But give me your feedback on these solo episodes, if it's something that I should do more of, or if this is just super lame. But I want to continue talking about like building this magazine, building businesses, building this podcast, these incredible experiences and trips that a motorcycle has taken me on, and all the lessons learned along the way. I think there's a lot of like interesting stories and value that can come from these stories. So if you guys want to hear more, let me know. And if you hate it, let me know, and I won't bore you anymore. But thanks for listening, man. I can't wait to keep on making these interviews happen. There's a lot of really cool guests coming up in the queue. So stay tuned, and we'll see you guys soon. Cheers. Before you go, I want to give a shout out to my amazing sponsor, Rider Justice. There's a lot stacked against us as riders. The unpredictable things that can happen out on the road, and there's a general negative perception of motorcyclists in the courts when something unfortunate happens. Thankfully, there's someone out there who's been fighting for us, like really fighting for over 25 years, and that's Scott O'Sullivan of Rider Justice. Scott is not just a lawyer, he's an advocate for riders. The kind who shows up to rallies, sits on nonprofit boards, gives free legal advice to riders in need, and truly fights for our rights. He launched Rider Justice to stand up for all of us, on the road, in the courtroom, and in our culture. If you've been hurt in a crash, if you've lost someone, or if you just want to know your rights as a rider, go to riderjustice.com.